What's up, everybody? I'm Steve Harris, and welcome to the show where it doesn't matter where we start as long as we finish strong. So, what if I told you that your behavior and your wellness is driven by your connectedness to others? In other words, as much as we tout our preference to be alone, it impacts us more negatively than what we think. How do you think you would change your environment accordingly if you knew the impact of this connectedness? In 2010, there was a researcher, his name was Bruce Alexander, actually a professor. He conducted a study called Rat Park, maybe you've heard of it. In a series of experiments, he put a single rat, in a cage alone with only 2 water bottles. Now, one of the water bottles was laced with heroin and the other just had plain water. The single rat in each of the experiments went for the heroin bottle each time. Alexander left each rat in the cage for 57 days. Eventually, each rat became obsessed with the heroin. Then he took all the rats out and placed them all together in a cage with the same water bottles, one laced with heroin and the other one plain. In this study, however, the rats withdrew from the addictive drug. They only drank the plain water. The rats played together and they spent time huddled together, sleeping and just enjoying one another's company, as a matter of fact. They went back to a normal life, away from the addiction. In other words, they connected. A relationship void was filled that didn't impact their need to escape emotionally. He demonstrated that heroin, or any drug, or any ill behavior for that matter, isn't an addiction problem. It's a connection problem. Such is true with any environment. It doesn't have to be drugs. When we spend too much time alone, away from our community, we become disconnected from the good and we connect to negativity and sometimes the evil. As a result, you're connecting to drugs, you're connecting to pornography, alcohol, it could be food. Maybe it's even just simply loneliness and anxiety that you haven't been able to fully wrap your head around. Regardless, it's putting your well-being at risk. It's connection to things as opposed to community, and that's a danger. Another example of this was during the Vietnam War. Did you guys know that 20% of our soldiers were using heroin at the time of the war? That's 1 out of every 5. There's that drug again. Politicians and scientists in the United States knew this. They were well aware of the issue, and even more so, they were concerned that the soldiers were going to bring this addiction back to the U.S. soil after the war. But that wasn't true. In fact, only 5% of the returning soldiers who were using heroin continued with the addictive behavior. That means the other 95% integrated back into U.S. society without rehabilitation and with limited effects from the withdrawal. Our environment shapes us. We don't necessarily shape our environment. Our connectedness to community impacts our emotional well-being. In other words, your health. And if you're in a place you don't want to be, or you think it's allowing you to only survive with limited friends, surrounded with only your devices and your survival mode just going on in your head, doing heroin is a great way to pass the time. But if you go back to community, surrounded by friends, the right friends, and family, it's like being put into a human rat park. We have this innate spiritual need to bond and connect. So if you're trying to do things alone, trying to spend time alone, trying to be isolated from people and community, you might be doing it wrong, or at least you might be putting yourself at risk. It's also an excellent example of the spiritual factor where we're able to come back to our Christian faith if we want to, if we have been away for too long. It's never too late to be what God has intended for us. When we change our environment, when we change our community, and we surround ourselves with other loving Christians, we tend to become loving Christians ourselves. We don't shape our environment. our environment tends to shape us. You see, it's not the chemicals, it's your cage. And as my good friend and mentor always tells me, pray hard, finish strong. See you guys.